My name is Elina and I was born and raised in the Rama Behera cult. I was in it for 17 years, left in 1996. This group was located in a town about half an hour west of Green Bay, Wisconsin. The town is called Shawano. It's a smaller town. It's not like Chicago or Minneapolis. And members lived in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and South Dakota, and they would come from these states every weekend and have meetings in Shawano at Rama's compound on the outskirts of Shawano. Just about every single weekend from Friday night to Sunday night, sometimes Monday morning.
What were the basic beliefs of the group?
They were mainly Christian, but they incorporated a lot of the Old Testament, the lifestyle and the customs. We ate kosher. Everyone dressed very modestly. Religiously, we believe that Jesus came down, but that was not emphasized very much. They read a lot of the New Testament as well. But in my life, from my understanding, that was not emphasized very much. As a matter of fact, I really didn't know what the heck I was supposed to believe in when I was in there, because it's all very confusing. But the main thing was we were supposed to live this clean lifestyle and never sin, and if we sinned, we were damned to hell unless we begged for forgiveness, and many times that didn't work. My earliest memories in the cult are of extreme physical abuse. The whippings consisted of being hit by 2x4s, being hit by house wire, and being hit by steel rods. My parents' marriage was arranged by the cult leader. They didn't know each other at all. At one point, Rama said at the end of the meeting, the Lord has made known that Matthew and Ann should be married. And they both just sat there, just kind of looked around. Who's Matthew? Who's Ann? They had no clue. And they only met for about 15 minutes before they actually joined together in the same house and started their marriage. At home, we pretty much led somewhat normal lives, with the exception of we always called Rama up for just about every decision. You call Rama up to change the oil. You call Rama to find out if you could take the day off from work. You would call to go to the hospital, or if we went to the hospital at the time. Things changed from year to year, from era to era. Sometimes we weren't allowed to go to doctors. Sometimes we were pushed to go to doctors.
So you weren't all living in a compound?
No.
You were living in separate houses?
Yes. We lived in separate houses, and we would go to church just like normal going to church. We would get up in the mornings, pray, take a shower, go out to work or school, or, if we did things, we had school at home at the time, we did that. We pray at noon, no matter where we were. It's like the Muslims do that. And then we come home for the evening and pray and take another shower. And that was during the week. But we did an awful lot of praying and worshiping, whether at home or on the road.
Then how often would you go to the church? Would that be
every weekend? And there was no, I think I'm not going to go this weekend. It was, if you didn't go, you were sinning. And it would come back to haunt you. You would be verbally and physically, verbally assaulted by the leader and by the followers.
What type of things would they say?
Just that you're sinning and you're ruining your life, and if you had a family, you're ruining your family's life. One of the main beliefs is that whatever you did was going to, Rama preached that it's going to visit your children and your children's children down to the third and fourth generations. That's the passage in the Bible that he used a lot. And so whatever you did, you thought that your grandchildren were going to have to pay for it spiritually. So you had to watch it.
It wasn't easy being a child in this group, was it?
No. It was literal hell. At home, even for the smallest infraction, you would get physically punished. Not as bad as if you were by Rama. But you still get a lot of lickings with belts and spatulas. there was a lot of verbal abuse going on at home as well. It was very much like a dysfunctional family life.
What would bring on these? What would you do wrong that would bring on the attacks?
At home, it was more typical stuff. If you didn't listen to your parents, if you argued back, or if you got into something you shouldn't have gotten into. But in Rama's, when we were in the meetings or at Rama's compound, it would be anything like looking away when you should have been listening to Rama. When you had only gotten an hour of sleep the night before and you're dozing off during the meeting, that was a major crime. If you were acting like a child, even at 5 years old, if you had been playing with a rock, that was the only toy you were given. If you'd been playing with a rock, that was a crime. You were not allowed any kind of personal enjoyment at all. As you got older, if you snuck out and watched a movie or smoked a cigarette or had a sexual relationship or anything that's considered personal entertainment was not allowed. As you got older, if you did that, it was considered rebellious, and you got verbally and physically assaulted.
What type of physical assault?
In my experience, I got a lot of whippings. I got beat up by 2x4s on my back and my legs, just all over my body, my arms. Another would be a house wire.
Do you remember exactly what you had done to bring about the 2x4s?
Talking to another kid, asking when the meeting was going to end. That would be it. Another physical punishment was the cattle prod. I asked this girl if she knew when the meeting was going to end. I was around 5 years old or something. And Rama saw that, and he didn't like it because I wasn't paying attention to him in the meeting. And so he told me to go inside and park afterwards. After he was done doing some things with the other brethren outside, he came in and hauled me to the back room and stuck the cattle prod in various places in my body, sensitive areas, under my arms, on my teeth and my mouth, under my knees and between my legs. And a cattle prod, I remember the feeling of this electric shocks going through my body. I remember my body bouncing up and down. I could still feel the pain shooting through from my head down to my feet. And it was just for talking to this girl. It was a minor infraction. And I ended up getting something that you would do to an animal. When I was little, my dad remembers giving me a bath, and my whole bottom and my back was completely black and blue from the beatings from the wires. Because Rama would just sit there. We'd be crouching on the floor, and Rama would interrogate us. And while he was interrogating us, he'd be beating us and whipping us with these wires or with the 2x4.
You saw other children being abused this way too?
Yes. And I've talked to them, and some of them are out now, and I've talked to every one of them. Every one of them went through the same thing. We all got very physically beat, physically abused. Most of our lives were spent being tormented. I had somebody say that it wasn't abuse, it was torment or torture.
Did you report this to any authorities?
Yeah, over the years, several people have. I recently did. And, but people have been reporting, the local authorities have known that this was happening for about 20, 25 years now. They've known that this has been going on. And they have not done a damn thing about it. They're just sitting there and they really don't care. Part of it's because they think it's a harmless little religious community. And for some reason, it just hasn't gotten through to them. The fact that this is not religion, that this is child abuse, this is human abuse. They haven't done anything about it. One of the ways he controlled this was he put me in a barrel for about 2 days straight. It was about 48 hours. I ended up sitting in that barrel. I didn't get anything to eat or anything to drink for the whole 2 days. And I was not allowed to go to the bathroom. And I'd be in there crying and whimpering and wondering what I had done wrong. At one point, I was very hungry and very desperate, and I would eat my own excrement. This happened to a lot of kids, and there's some kids that ended up being in there longer than 2 days. I was in there for 2 days.
And others knew of this?
Yes, yes. At one point, they didn't know very much about it, because afterwards I talked to my parents about all this different stuff, the physical abuse and the solitary confinement, and they said they didn't have any idea.
Where did they think you were when you were gone for 2 days?
I was, a lot of times Rama would have the adults go out and work, and the kids would be babysat by 1 or 2 other adults. And so while our parents are out in the field working or whatever, they had no idea what was happening back when we were sitting there being watched. At one point earlier when I was younger, like 7, 10 years old, he was putting telephone wires around his compound to make phone calls and everything else. And so they would have to erect the telephone poles, and so they would dig these 10 feet, 15 feet holes to hold them in place. Before they put the poles in, Rama used those kind of the same way he used the barrels. And he would put, if one of us was being naughty, or if we weren't listening, if we weren't working as hard as he wanted us to, we would be working, our fingers would be bleeding, but that wouldn't be enough. And so he would pick us up, or have one of the other adults pick us up and throw us in the holes, and we would end up spending a good couple of days in there, rain or shine, snow or sleet. We'd be thrown in there, and we would have to sit in there for a good couple of days. And if it was raining, the mud would be coming down, and we would just be covered with mud, and we would end up eating it because it would go into our mouths. It was actually pretty good. I actually liked mud. But I can just remember being in that hole and just crying, and the rain's coming down, mixing with my tears, wondering what I had done so wrong, and just feeling sorry for myself in every right. And then a couple days later, one of them would come and pull me out, and I'd just be covered with like 2 inches of dirt, and I hadn't eaten anything all day. The instance of the barrels, when they pulled us out, I can remember my parents' faces contorting from just the smell, the body odor, and the fact, that we'd gone to the bathroom in there. And I just remember it must have smelled horribly. And I really don't know how they felt about it. I wish I knew, but they won't talk about it.
So they were there when you were pulled out of the barrel?
Not all the time. It was like the times that they were there, they weren't there. I would say just about 1 or 2 weekends out of every month I was in those barrels. They were there for probably the 2 or 3 times a year.
But they had seen this.
They had seen it happening. They just didn't know how often. And some of the adults did not know it happened at all.
What was your relationship like with your parents?
It was very much like we were all adults that kind of roomed together, but we really didn't know each other intimately at all. There was not any love or there was no love. No emotion was allowed to be expressed between us. We never got to know each other and who we all were. I pretty much looked at my parents as 2 other people in my life, and not as my loving parents that they should have been.
Do you think that was the general feeling in the group?
Yes.
Or just your household?
No, it was the general feeling in the group. Everyone, there was no kind of a relationship whatsoever between people, except that we all were pretty much like acquaintances. Even though we were going through all this together, and many of us were related by blood, we were not family at all. We considered each other like acquaintances. And there was absolutely no emotional connection. I remember at one point one of the adult men had died from a car accident. And they went to his funeral, but nobody cried. Nobody comforted the family, the wife or the children. The wife and the children didn't cry. They were very disconnected emotionally from everything that was going on around them. Everybody was. There was no love. My parents, as soon as we were able to walk, they were told to put us down.
That was policy.
That was policy. You know, no kissing, no hugging, no saying I love you. You know.
Was this written anywhere, or was this just handed down?
This was handed down. There were no written rules or anything like that.